Welcome. This is the What Really Matters podcast, episode 7.
Can you believe it? We've recorded 7 episodes already.
Yeah.
Hour and a half times 7. That's a lot of hours.
Man, I've really enjoyed it. It's been fun.
Same here. And thanks to everyone who's tuned in and watched our podcast. And thank you to those people who sent us comments.
Yeah.
And gave us suggestions and stuff. So
the support has been really good. It's enjoyable to just listen to how people say what was useful for them when we are speaking, or maybe it's some way that it helped them or it perturbed them to think of something in a new way. It was really good.
And hopefully I look less tired today because I had more sleep. So
Yep.
that's good.
Yep. You're looking good, Terrence.
I always look good.
Any haircuts recently?
No.
Shout out to Tim.
No, Jeff.
Yeah. Shout out to Jeff.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so something that's been on my mind here recently is, I have a prayer list that people go on whenever they need things, and I'm always asking, and I've noticed a lot of people that have been dealing with illness, and not like coughing illness. I'm talking like long-term
Life-threatening.
cancer, life-threatening illness. And it's challenging for people to cope with the realities of that. So I've noticed. And I find it, and I don't know until I would be in that situation how I would handle it.
Yeah.
But, a lot of it brings up this idea of like, I don't know what's going to happen. Is this curable? Is this not? How much time do I have left? Those kinds of things. Like, you start to really bring in these existential questions about life. So that's been heavy.
You're right. It's only when our sense of mortality becomes real, that's when we really get real, right?
Yeah.
When we're healthy, we think about our looks. We think about winning matches in sports. We think about all these useless stuff or this mundane stuff, and forget what really matters. But when we get sick, then and we're face to face with our mortality, which is reality, is that we're all mortals, and then that's when we come to terms with the things that really matter, and that's when we also think about God. That's why there's a saying that that says there's no atheist in foxholes, right? It's because when you're faced with potential death, that's when you start thinking about what really matters. And in life, what really matters is our eternity, right?
Yeah.
So about being with God or not being with God. So
Yeah, I noticed, it's like, to me, I think about like God can do the impossible, but it's only when we're faced with the impossible situation do we call upon God, if we're not already close with him. And I speculate that this idea that when we are close to death, many people, they come right to God and ask for prayers and pray.
yeah.
Because it's in a way of like you want something that's greater than yourself to show up because you're powerless in the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I've just been in wonder around that. Like, people are dealing with death and cancer, and what does this mean? I'm noticing it, but I'm unsure what to do with it. I want to care and be there for people. And so, like adding them to the prayer list and taking care of them in whatever way I can, like providing a covering through prayer.
But that's the right approach. First and foremost, that's the right approach. I learned this earlier on when my daughter was sick, and that's why I wrote this in my book. I said seeking God should be our first option and not our last resort, right? Because most people, or most of us, we try to do everything we can. Of course, we should, but we are so self-reliant. We think that if we do this, we'll get better. We'll do that. Of course, you have to seek all the care that you need, the health care, and whatever else needs to be done. But the first option should be to seek God's help. We shouldn't wait till we've tried everything else and everything else failed. Then as a last resort, oh God, maybe I should ask you now. The opposite is true. It doesn't hurt. In fact, it is wise to start off seeking God and let God guide you how to seek the right help.
Right.
Even looking for doctors. The thing here is in the States, it's a developed country. We have access to the greatest healthcare in the world, and we tend to have this idea that, I'll just I have all my connections. I'll go find the best doctors in this field, and I'll be okay. Right. And then when everything else fails, then that's when you seek God. Instead, we should seek God first. Not that we don't seek medical help, but seek God in prayer and say, maybe, Lord, lead me to the right doctor.
Yeah, counsel me in my decisions.
Yeah, help me, set me up to where I end up with the right doctor.
Yeah.
Right? Or set me up with a situation to where give me wisdom to make the right decisions about the options that doctors give me, right? So that's what I mean by seeking God first. It's not that you don't do what you need to do, but it's seeking God for guidance and for comfort and and just encouragement, right?
Yeah. I was thinking something that came up when you shared that is God is a forgiving God. Right? Jesus died on the cross for our sins in a way that has forgiven our sins that we have committed in the flesh and that we will continue to commit because we are sinners. We're not perfect. And in that forgiveness, I think some people may feel as if they're not worthy of forgiveness. And so that's why their logic may lead them for God to be the last resort. Because they're like, why would he want to help me out because I'm this XYZ person? It's like, well, hold on a minute. The logic's reversed there. God is a forgiving God, which means that he forgives you and accepts you for who you are and loves you for who you are. And if God forgives you, then you should have it within you to forgive you. And I say should, like that's maybe moralistic, but it's the idea that we have to accept help and accept the love that God has given us in these really difficult moments, because I think going through that with a spirit of peace, love, and joy is a much different experience than anxiety, worry, stress. And of course, it's easy for me to say that while I'm sitting here and not going through it. So I want to be respectful to those that may be going through it.
Yeah, the problem, what you said was perfect. The problem with us human beings is that we put God in this box that follows human thinking and human terms.
Yeah.
Right? So human terms in like the transactional term. I have to be good for God to take care of me.
Right.
I have to be nice to Chris for Chris to take care of me. But we're using human terms to describe God. And that's the false premise to begin with.
Yeah.
And so if you have the wrong premise, you will have the wrong conclusion. But God doesn't function like human beings. God said, your ways are not my ways. My ways are not your ways,
Yeah.
So God doesn't think like us. We would have no point needing God if God thinks like us,
Right. It's like the idea that we see things as miracles. God sees that as that's an everyday thing for him. Right. It's not a miracle, because a miracle is like the idea that something happens, like an impossible thing is possible. It's like God does that regularly for people all around the world. But we can't conceptualize that in our minds at times. It's very difficult to. But just to know that he is loving and forgiving, it's
Yeah, what's hard for us to conceptualize is because God has so much to give, and he just gives.
so much love.
And then, so much love to give that he just gives out of the bounty that he has,
Yeah.
But we have limited amount of love in our hearts, so that's why we can only give so much. It's like if I was a billionaire, if I give you $100,000, it's like nothing, right?
Right.
It doesn't hurt my pockets. It doesn't hurt me. Just 100,000 here. It's no big deal, right? But if I only have $10,000 in my bank, if I give you $100, that's a lot, right? So God is the billionaire in love, or even more, or trillionaire in love. So giving you $1 billion love is just normal for him.
Yeah, no problem.
So that's why we can't compare ourselves with God. That's why sometimes we, like you said, we seek God as a last resort because we're embarrassed.
Yeah.
Like God might think I'm a user.
Right.
He doesn't care. He would
Doesn't.
rather you be dependent on him
Yes.
than not, right?
Yeah, it's like,
Because if you keep asking me for help, you're worried that I might think, oh, you're just a user, or you're just keep bothering me, right? But sometimes I'm happy to be bothered, right? So
Yeah.
God's happy to be bothered. God would rather us be dependent on him. That's one situation that's very counterintuitive, right? God would rather us be fully dependent on him. In fact, Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches, right? He is that correct, right? I'm the vine,
I'm
you're
not
the
sure.
branches, right? He who stays with me will live, right? So in other words, he would rather us be dependent on him and getting nutrients from him than us trying to be independent and wither, right?
Yeah. I have read it in a couple spots, but Deuteronomy 8, I think it's like 8 verse 3 or 4.
I can't.
Anyway,
the
the verse basically says like God provides the way, but seeking God before we even take care of our own survival is the way that he calls us to live. And in the Lord's Prayer, Matthew chapter 6, God talks about, or Jesus talks about, give us this day our daily bread. Like God is providing for you your daily bread every day.
Yeah.
And,
so that's one consistency in the Bible, is that God wants us to be fully dependent on him, as opposed to the worldly way of looking at it. You got to be independent,
Right.
Don't just depend on other people.
Yeah.
But that's the opposite teaching. God's teaching is the opposite. I want you to be fully dependent on me. Right?
And case in point is when you're faced with an impossible situation, that's when God says, I'm showing you that I am all powerful and almighty. I am the everlasting Father because of these situations that there's no way you can get out of this through your own will. You need to rely on me for me to show you the way.
Right. So God lets us try to be independent so we can realize we're better off if we're dependent on him.
Yeah. And it's, in a way, it's very humbling.
Yeah.
And that in a way, so the logic train with that is it's very humbling, and then it's, I fear God because I don't want to be put in these impossible situations. I would rather know and trust and have faith in God through anything, and know that nothing is impossible through God. And if anything does happen that may be treacherous or very difficult to go through, is he is building a character in me, or he's doing that for a reason and a purpose. Right. And I might not know what it is. It could be to impact somebody else that I have no idea.
Yeah. So going back to the prayer list, right? You have a whole prayer list of people who are who are sick, who are suffering. So I guess so. Illness, the what makes us suffer when we have life-threatening illness, or some difficult situations, like depression or grieving somebody's loss. The biggest issue there is the uncertainty, right? It's the
Absolutely.
uncertainty that makes us suffer, right? It's not knowing, am I gonna get better? How long is this illness gonna last? Will this end in death or end in healing, right?
Yeah.
So what's gonna happen to me with the treatment? Am I gonna get sick with the treatment? I mean, or sorry, if you suffer like a breakup, you wonder, why did this happen? Why did this have to happen? Am I gonna find somebody else? Or are we gonna get back together? I mean, all these kinds of questions, the unknown,
Yes.
is what cause us to feel suffering. So my question to you, Chris, is, so how do you cope with uncertainty when you're in a situation where you don't understand, either because of illness or just life situations, business? So how do you deal? What's your go-to approach if you're dealing with something that is uncertain and it's eating you up?
So my go-to first would be prayer, of course. Some things that come up for me is like, when I'm sick, the only thing I care about is being better.
Right.
And so if I'm sick, then I locate my symptoms. Do I understand what it is? And then if there's a remedy, so to speak, I'm going to get really good at that remedy. Whatever that practice is, how do I make that as perfect as possible? Because I care about being back to health. Same thing goes with like injury.
So your go-to first is prayer.
Yeah.
So what
would I pray?
What would you pray about?
Yep. So my prayer starts with giving thanks and then confessing that, hey, God, I'm a sinner. I need forgiveness. Thank you for sending Jesus. This is undeserving, and I'm so grateful for that. Then I say, I'm challenged in this situation. Here's what's going on. I'm uncertain about this. I don't know, but what I'm asking, God, is for you to counsel me. Counsel me in my decisions. Counsel me in my thoughts. I want your thoughts in my life, in my mind, not my own. Because if it's left up to me, I'm in poor me. Why me? This is the worst. Why can't I just be better? So then I say, it's your will being done in my life. I accept, and I have to cope with that. But counsel me in my ways of dealing with it. I need help. And if there's a sign or something you could give me, I would love to see if there's and if that means that I don't get better, I accept that too. And that's my nature of, I know God has a plan in my life. So
what if, so you came to my office to discuss some test results.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm giving you a real life situation,
yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Because this is always, I've seen this so many times. So you come to my office and I ran a bunch of tests on you last week, and we're going to discuss the test results. You don't know what I'm going to tell you yet.
Yeah.
And then I give you some terrible news. Your normal human response would be you're in a panic. And most people then shuts off and cannot think.
Yep, I would probably start there.
And start thinking the worst and just losing their mind.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, you cannot just say, as I'm talking to you in the doctor's office, realistically, you can't just say, okay, Lord,
Depends on your relationship with God, I think.
So
But
how would you? So you're in that. You're
yeah,
in my. This
and
is
if I'm
this is the
sitting
doctor's
in,
office.
yeah,
now.
I'm sitting in your office. You deliver this bad news to me. My first response is, I'm not sure how to take this. Is this curable? What remedies do you recommend, or what's the next step here? I would start there. And then as soon as I leave, then it would probably be breakdown, definitely crying, a lot of deep breathing like that. And then I would, from there, probably begin a prayer in the car, not in the office,
Yeah.
But I would try to get as much information. What do you recommend? As much as I could to say, how do I get better? And then after that, yeah, I'm heavy in prayer and definitely emotional.
Remember our previous episode when I said that I try to be very simplistic about things in life.
Yes.
I oversimplify things in life. Remember the whole discussion about when you're in a situation of chaos, it's hard to think.
Mm-hmm.
And so the simpler, the better, because
Yeah.
you can draw on something quick to react.
Yes.
And so that applies to me also in situations like this. When I'm faced with that kind of situation that I just described, my first response, my go-to response would be pause. Hit pause.
Yeah.
And just take a deep breath. Just pause. I would usually just think of nothing and just breathe. We underestimate the power of pause.
Yeah.
So
That's a really good point.
So that applies in a lot of situations. So when you say something to offend me, instead of thinking of what my comeback's gonna be to fight back and defend my honor, the go-to response would be pause. If you give me bad news and I don't know how to respond and don't know what to think, I would just pause. So the power of pause. I think I've done that in many situations in my life, and I've learned that to be a very effective coping mechanism. And so, like, if you ask me a difficult question that I don't have answers to, there's no rush to give an answer. Just pause. So if I recently had a breakup and I'm hurting,
Yeah.
and I don't know what the future brings, I don't need to know what the future brings. I just pause.
Yeah.
There's no need to come up with an answer.
Just allow.
And yeah, just accept the situation and just let it be for now, I mean, obviously you want to do things to remedy your situation. If you're sick, you want to go get the right medical care, but the doctor is still talking to you, giving you the diagnosis and explaining to you the prognosis and everything, and you're trying to process everything. You cannot possibly make a decision at that point. Okay, I'm gonna take option A and option B. If you don't know, there's no rush. Just pause.
Yeah.
So I call that the power of pause.
I would definitely. I would probably be maybe. I think in shock, so I would like unintentionally take a pause.
Yeah, and the pause, the silence, is a form of prayer. God said in, I think, Deuteronomy, "Be still and know that I'm God." God wants us to just be still.
Yeah.
Knowing that God's in control.
Yeah.
I know we have to be go-getters, but so that goes back to my my suggestion earlier that seeking God should be the first option, not the last resort. So by pausing, I'm saying, okay, God, you're in control. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Okay, I'm gonna pause first, and I'll wait to hear from you. So I don't really have to. So that's a little bit. So as I've gotten older, I've changed the way I pray. Because sometimes so praying, so God already knows what we're going through, I believe. And so I don't have to give God a recap of what's going on. He
Right.
knows what's going on. And I don't need to tell God, hey, I need you to do this for me, do this for me, do that for me. He already knows what I'm going through. And the more I talk to him, the less I'm able to hear him. So I literally would just pause and just be quiet and just lay still and wait to hear from God.
Yeah.
I think that's how my faith has developed, in the sense that I'm not in a rush to hear or feel the prompting from God. I will feel it and I will know it, and I will sense God's prompting when it's there. So I literally, I'm not exaggerating. I'm back to the best business in America are the ones who keep things simple, and I keep my life very simple. I just pause.
Yeah.
And remembering the following principles. Number one, the sun always rises the next day. Number two, everything works out eventually. And eventually I will hear from God, and God's guidance and will manifest, and I will somehow, one way or the other, I will find out what God wants me to do and where he wants to lead me. I mean, I've been in multiple situations where patients tell me, I was just talking to one of my friends, and they were talking about their illnesses, and they said that I need to come see you. So these are people who've seen other doctors already, and then there's no diagnosis, or they're not getting better. And then suddenly, out of the blues, they talk to someone, and their friend said, hey, why don't you go see Dr. Antuaco? And then they come see me, and then out of the blues, and then I say something, and I make some recommendations, and it turned out that it worked. Or I happened to figure out what's wrong with them on accident, I mean, of course, I try my best to think, but doctoring doesn't work like that. You cannot just sit there and say 1 + 1 is equals to 2. That's not how it works. I mean, obviously there's some basic things that you need to know, but then a lot of times it's God's grace, to where you ask the patient questions to get clues, and then I end up asking the right questions, and then find the answers that's been there all the time that nobody saw. But not that I'm super smart, but I just happen to be at the right place at the right time and ask the right questions, or the symptoms just manifested at the right time when they were seeing me, and then I make the diagnosis. But all that, what I mean is, it's God's prompting. If you trust God to guide you, God knows what's wrong with you and what you need already. And if you just trust that, in due time, in God's time, he will prompt you and lead you to the right direction. And that's just how it works. And if you look at your life and stuff that you've been through in the past, I think you would agree with me that in the end, everything works out.
It always has.
Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Even in the most dire situations.
Yeah, everything in the end works out.
Yeah.
It may not work out the way you envision it to be.
Or on my time.
Yeah, not your time, or not your strategy, or not the way you imagine it to work out, but it will work out.
Yeah.
Like, for example, people going through breakups or depression. Sometimes you feel like this is not ending. I just don't feel well, and I feel like I'm never gonna see the light of day again. That my life ended with the end of this relationship.
Right.
And then suddenly somebody pops up into your life, and nothing else in the past mattered to you anymore. Suddenly you remember your ex, but you don't feel,
it's not the same.
You don't feel anything anymore.
Yeah.
That's God's doing, right? I mean, things like that happen.
Absolutely.
Right?
And then you look back and you say, Thank you, God, for
Right. Or
bringing
you
me
don't
out of
some
that.
or like addiction, for example. Like I
Yeah.
saw on your prayer list earlier, there are people who have some addiction to alcohol or drugs. So that's a great example, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain types of drugs that when people get addicted to, it's just hard. Willpower will not be enough to get you unhooked, you know.
Yeah.
But then there are people, I've heard testimonies of people who one day wake up and suddenly had no urge whatsoever for what they're addicted to. And that's God,
Yeah.
right? But while you're in that storm, you don't seem to see the end of it or the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
Mm.
And then you start feeling hopeless because you're trusting in yourself. You're trusting in human
Thinking
behavior and physiology.
yeah.
And you seem like it's impossible. But like you said earlier, nothing is impossible for God. But that's where the faith comes in. So when you're in a situation like that, when things seem hopeless, when things seem so overwhelming, or you don't know what to do, or can't even imagine how this is gonna break through, just pause. Pausing is a form of prayer, and pausing is a manifestation of faith, and pausing gives you comfort.
Yeah.
Pausing is like surrendering to God and say, here I am, Lord. I don't know what's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
But you know what? I don't have the energy to fight this anymore. I don't have the strength, and I don't have the wisdom, but you do.
Yeah.
So
it's
then,
like a surrender to God, so to
right.
speak.
So then I don't have the strength or the wisdom, but you do. So then, you know what? I'm going to stop worrying about it. I will let you do it. But letting you do it, letting God do it, doesn't mean you just don't do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So this is a private conversation. I know my wife doesn't listen to this podcast anyway, you know. So one time my wife and I had this argument. So when our daughter was very sick, so she got mad at me because we were in the hospital for 8 straight months. And
Months, not days.
months, yeah. And so I would go to work, then I go back to the hospital, and I sleep in the hospital room in the cot. And so my wife would spend all her time looking up medical literature, because she's a doctor, you know, she's a pediatrician, so she knows about my child's illness. So she kept looking for the latest treatment, what possible thing, what need to do. She was looking for data. Looking for data to help. She's trying to help the doctor and help God cure my daughter, right? And then I'm sitting on one side, and all I do is pray. Literally, I'm so weak, and I was so weak and depressed and physically exhausted. I had no energy to read. And besides, she had a rare illness, and there's no treatment anyway. The doctors don't know how to treat anyway. What am I gonna read? Right? So I just spent my days and night praying. So one day my wife got fed up, because every time she looks at me, I'm praying, and she felt like I wasn't helping her. She felt like I didn't care. So she looked at me and said, "Is that all you're gonna do?
Wow.
Is that all you're gonna do? You're just gonna sit there and pray all day, all night? Is that all you're gonna do?" And then she said, "What do you think? You think God's just gonna come down from heaven and fix everything for us and just tell us what to do?" Those were her almost exact words.
Yeah.
She said, "Do you think God's just gonna come down from heaven and do it all for you?" You know what my answer was? Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Because that's the truth, right? God may not come in physical form that you see. God's not going to come down in physical form to write you a note or give you a prescription or tell you, here's the drug that you need to cure your daughter. But God does it through the people around us. God guides our doctors to make the right decisions. God guides the nurses. Like when my daughter had a kidney failure at that time, And it was a nurse who was just going through my daughter's chart. Her name is Christy. I owe her a lot. She was going through my daughter's chart one night when we were in the hospital because my daughter went into kidney failure the second time around. And she then asked a question, have you all checked the vancomycin level? So my daughter was getting these antibiotics because of a severe infection because her immune system was shut down. And so she was getting this powerful antibiotics called vancomycin. But you need to check levels because if you don't, the level goes too high and you end up in kidney failure. So that's what happened to my daughter. We didn't know why she kept going to kidney failure the second time. And so when she asked that question, I suddenly realized, oh my God, we've never checked the vancomycin level. Of course, we're not the doctors.
Right, but still.
But the thing is, I'm a doctor. Mm-hmm. My wife's a doctor. We should have thought about that. It's not rocket science, but it was overlooked. Excuse me.
Wow. So you're going through a situation where it seems impossible to get through.
Yeah.
8 months of uncertainty.
Yeah. So all I did was pray, and so prayer was answered. Christy, the nurse, asked that question, have you all checked the vancomycin level? She was just looking for the vancomycin level because she's getting vancomycin. So for her to give the next dose, she would have to look at the levels.
Right, see where it's at.
And we just realized we haven't been checking that. But the people who deliver the medicine would always ask, has your daughter had her blood test done? And we always say yes, because she gets tons of blood tests done every single day. Not thinking that she has blood tests done, but she's never had her vancomycin level checked.
Oh, wow.
You see, that's how God works.
Yeah.
God worked through Christy, the nurse.
Yeah. Wow.
The right place at the right time. But you know what? But God had to allow my daughter to have kidney failure twice for us to see this miracle. And the miracle was not that Christy asked that question. The miracle was that we were going through this traumatic, we were having PTSD because every time we go to the hospital, she gets better a little bit, we get sent home for one day, then we end up going back to the hospital again.
Oh, wow.
So every time is, whenever something goes well, I'm already afraid that something bad's going to happen again. So it's like this feeling of not again.
Right.
Not again. Not again. But the thing with this kidney failure issue that happened to us is that, so she had kidney failure the first time. She recovered in record time. In 1 week, she was able to go home. Her kidney recovered. We went home and then went to the clinic for an outpatient check a few days later. Her kidney failed again. Her numbers were so high. And so we were admitted again.
Wow.
So I actually, this is in my book, Divine Intervention. So I actually, during this second kidney failure, when she had to be readmitted, as I entered the hospital, I suddenly felt this prompting from God. And God said, the only way to cure your PTSD is to have the same circumstances, but have a different outcome. Right? Because every time is this situation, the same outcome, which is not again, another bad news. This situation, the same outcome. She gets better and then not again. She's sick again. So God told me at that time, I entered that hospital. I still remember that the elevator that I went into. I went to the elevator and suddenly I felt God speaking to me and said, the only way to cure your PTSD is to have the same circumstances, but have a different outcome.
Wow.
So this second kidney failure, the miracle of that moment is that she had the second renal failure and I was expecting the same outcome and the outcome was different. and the outcome was the doctor said this is going to take a long time to recover, and in a less than 2 weeks she got her kidneys recovered, and it stayed well.
Wow.
The same circumstances, different outcome. And so that was a cure for PTSD. Anyway, the point being,
Yeah.
my wife questioned me, is that all you're gonna do?
Right.
Is that all you're gonna do? Just sit there and pray all day? Is God just gonna come from heaven and just fix the problem for you? You're not gonna lift a finger? You're not gonna read? You're not gonna talk to the doctors? You're not gonna... Of course I will. But what do I know? I'm not a pediatrician. Even the pediatrician, the pediatric hematologists don't even know what the right answer is. Right? So
And that's what they
am I
study.
gonna do?
Right.
So I'm better off just praying and let God guide me. In His time, we'll have the answer. So fast forward, what, 12, 13 years now, my daughter's doing great.
Yeah.
So who did the right choice? My wife's reading didn't help. Right?
Yeah.
My prayer probably helped more.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like we don't know how, right? Meaning your wife thought it was in the book, you thought it was in prayer. We don't know how, but what we're doing is what we can, the best we can to provide the best outcome for.
It just makes us feel it just makes us feel better.
Yeah.
Knowing that we're doing something.
Yes.
It's busybody.
Yeah.
Right?
That is
you
so
feel
true.
you're doing something and you feel better that you're doing something. But if you're not doing something efficiently, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
That's why I said in my book, it's more efficient to trust God.
So true. You
right?
can
if you
cast your
trust
cares
God
upon Him.
at the outset,
Yeah.
that will be the more efficient approach than to do everything else and do everything you can and end up back to square one anyway, not knowing the answer.
Yeah.
So that's why when you're, again, the same question I asked you,
Yeah.
when you're in a situation where you don't understand the situation or you don't understand what's going on or what the outcome's going to be or what your future's going to be, just be in the present. Accept your circumstances and just be still. Pause. Remember I talked about the ABCs of calming the crisis?
Yeah.
So A is accept, B, be still, C, carry on. Right? Accept your circumstances. Accept what's going on.
Yeah.
Don't deny it. If you accept it, then you know how to find help. Accept it. You're suffering a heartbreak. Somebody broke up with you. Accept it. You can't force somebody to love you.
Right.
Accept it. Be still. Do what you can. Fix what you can. If you can't fix it, if there's nothing to fix, just let it be.
Yeah.
See, carry on. Enjoy life. Enjoy God's gifts. Enjoy what you still have.
Right.
Don't lose what you still have because you're crying over what you lost.
Right.
Focus on what you still have and value them so that you don't lose what you have currently.
Yeah.
And have to go through heartbreak again, right?
Man, it's good. Thinking about that faith in God is the fastest way to the miracle, and not faith like, hey, I have faith. It's faith, and then in your heart believing in God and in the faith that you have. Jesus heals the blind men that way and says that they're healed because of their faith.
Right.
And I think that's really powerful. It's like we can be in a prayer, but it'd be very transactional. Well, yeah, God, listen, I'm struggling, need some help. Come down, help me out. Let me just, I promise I'll change. I just need help right here. But I think a true faith has a much different orientation or mood about it. Whereas there's there's love there, there's joy, there's peace. There's like that humility aspect of it that I think it's much different. Knowing that God saves, like he sent Jesus to die on the cross for our sins.
Yeah.
What more could we ask for? Well, we didn't know we needed it. He provided it, and now we can live in that forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I bring it back to the forgiveness because accepting life and being still, I think, requires a level of like self-forgiveness, of being in the situation and like to let it be okay, and to know that it's always worked out and it always will. And that's like sometimes very hard to be in grips with, because you're like, sometimes like my situations where God has come through, I'm like, I don't know how I got here, but I just know that everything that's left up to me is not producing the outcomes that I desire. So I don't know what to do. I'm going to be still. I accept God, like I surrender.
Yeah.
I thought I could do it, and now I have a cross to carry that I can't do it myself. I need some help.
Yeah, from a practical standpoint, let me share with you some insights how faith heals. So if I have faith, so faith meaning I trust that God's gonna help me, or God will take care of things. He's got this, right? That's faith in a practical way of putting it. If I have faith, then I'm more relaxed. I'm able to be still.
Right.
When I'm relaxed, I'm able to heal physically. When you're always anxious and depressed and panicking, your adrenaline level, your cortisol level shoots up.
Yeah.
So that affects your healing.
Right.
Your wound healing will slow down if your cortisol is too high. I mean, there's a scientific basis for that.
Yeah.
So if you have faith, you're relaxed, your hormones are balanced, you're giving your body the optimal conditions to heal. Number two, if you have faith, meaning you live in total surrender to God, you obviously, it's not like, hey, God, come on, when am I going to get better?
Right.
You know, it's not like that. It's like, okay, you're relaxed. Faith is when you say you surrender to God and you're relaxed and you let God manifest in his time, when whatever God wants or however God wants it to evolve, right? And so if you're living in that kind of mindset, then you are more likely to be able to hear God's voice. Because if you're panicking, you can't hear God's voice.
That's good.
Then you say, I feel distant to God. God's not helping me. I don't feel God's presence. God never left you.
Yeah, that's powerful.
God never left us. He never does.
Yeah.
But we can't feel his presence because our mind is so distracted by our anxiety and panicking and depression and everything. Our mind is so cluttered with all these emotions that we don't realize God's with us. It's like if I come to you to comfort you, and I'm here and you're on your phone looking stuff and this, and I'm sitting here trying to comfort you and want to spend time with you and talk to you, whatever, but you're not listening to me.
Wow.
So if I'm trying to, hey Chris, this is what you need to do, you'll be fine, you should do this and that, but you're not listening to me, so how will I ever get through to you?
Right.
It's the same thing with God.
Yeah.
If your faith is just saying, okay, I'm gonna believe in God, but what's the practical application of believing in God? If you believe that God is all powerful and all knowing, that God knows what you need and all powerful and can fix what's wrong with you, and loving, and so he cares about you. If you believe all that, then you should chill. Chill, surrender.
Surrender, yeah.
He'll take care of me.
Wow.
He'll lead me to get the help. But how will you hear? So if God says, Chris, go see Dr. B. Chris, hello, Chris, go see Dr. B, not Dr. A.
What?
But you're too busy. You're not listening
Yeah.
because your mind is cluttered,
Mm.
right? So that's the practical aspect.
Man, that's
Your
so
body
good.
heals because your cortisol level will be lower if you're relaxed, right?
Mm.
And so okay, so let's talk about breakups. So if you have a breakup and you don't have, you're not in a faith situation where you're able to relax and surrender, you're gonna act grouchy, grumpy, you're irritable, and
Yeah.
so you're never gonna find another mate.
Right.
You're never gonna find anybody else to make you happy because you're so grumpy. You're turning people away. You're turning people off.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to come near you, right? And then you say, nobody's helping me. Well, people are trying to help you, but you're so grumpy that people are even afraid to come near you,
Yeah.
right?
That's a great analogy for many other areas of life
Right.
where we can't see the opportunity in front of us because we're so stuck
Engrossed,
in our
yeah.
own mind.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's a practical application of
That's good,
how
man.
faith heals,
yeah.
right? So I talked about illness. I talked about depression.
Yeah.
You know, so because your faith will manifest. If you're living a life of faith, if your mindset is surrendering to God and just letting things be and flow, then it will manifest. Your body will heal. People will come to you. People will come comfort you and help you. And you're more open to people trying to make you happy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're always hateful because you don't feel good, and so you're hating, right?
Yeah. Man, that's so good.
Because sometimes we make faith too complicated, right? We make it like so theological. We make it so
Yeah.
highfalutin, like church-like discussion. But if you break it down to practical application, that's my practical insight on faith and how it heals.
That's really good. I really enjoyed what I noticed there. The second part is the mood and the orientation, because God is always with us. It's just, are we able to kind of get out of our own way to listen?
Yeah, we're the ones turning our attention away.
Yeah.
You know, so we talked about being present, right? So that's why if you try to be present, you really don't have a problem. Okay, like for example,
That's
right
a
now.
great-
Okay,
yeah,
so
great
pretend you're going through a lot of stuff. I'm going through
Okay.
a lot of stuff. So let's pretend for a second. Okay, not pretend. Let's just be present at the moment. So we're present here right now. I'm talking to you. You're talking to me. We're having an easy conversation. We're sitting on a comfortable chair, comfortable room temperature. We're just appreciating that. We're appreciating that we can see each other. We can hear each other. We feel good. We don't have tummy ache. You know, we're not having abdominal cramps or leg cramps. You know, we can feel. We're able to move. We're just thankful. We're just
Yeah.
thankful. We're able to breathe easy, although my nose is congested a little bit, you know, but we're breathing easy. We don't have emphysema. We don't have asthma. We're able to breathe. We're just being in the present.
Right.
So as we're thinking through all that, there's no space to think about our problems,
Right.
right? We're so busy trying to be present. Oh, I'm breathing. Oh, I can hear. I can feel. I can, you know. I'm thankful. I'm here. I'm safe.
Yeah.
I don't hear gunshots, you know? I
Right.
mean, you're so busy being in the present, there's no time to even have a moment to think about the past or the future. We don't have time to worry about the future or be distressed about what happened in the past
Yeah.
because we're so much in the present.
Wow.
And then if
Yeah.
we're so much in the present, then okay, let's feel God's presence now. Right? We just said
Complete different mood from.
we just said God is always present with us.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Feel
let's
it.
be present and let's be aware that God is in our midst.
Mm.
And Jesus said in the Bible, if 2 or 3 of you come together in my name, I am in your midst. Okay,
Yep.
so God
In
is
your
in our
presence.
midst. We're talking about God, so God's with us right now.
Yeah.
So let's be aware of that.
Mm.
So now we're aware of God's presence, right?
Yeah,
You feel God's presence.
I do. Yeah.
That's as simple as I can explain it.
Yeah. I something that stands out to me that I think is so important is that mood. You know, the fruits of the Spirit, God calls us to, it's basically the moods.
Right.
In those moods, that really opens up a space for us to not only feel God's presence, but share that presence with other people. And it's always there. It's just up to us to weed out the distractions and the situations.
The
noise. And I found that the noise keeps ramping up more and more. Fear this, fear that. Oh, can't do that because of my past. Can't do this because of the future. Lack of resources, lack of XYZ.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just go back to the Lord's prayers that God gives us our daily bread every day.
Yeah.
And if we can live in that moment and be like so simplistic that give us this day our daily bread, we can like speak that or read that and say, I have received my daily bread, and that's sufficient. Like,
Yeah.
that's good enough.
So I'll give you another. So along that line, right? So a practical application of what you just said is that the noises are the thoughts in our head. Okay?
Yeah.
So in order to not succumb to that noise, the practical application there is to recognize that your thoughts and you are two separate entities. This is Chris. This is the noise in Chris's head. Turn towards it. Face it. Look at it. Observe it. The importance of that concept is that if you turn towards that noise in your head, you're looking at it head on, you suddenly realize you are observing it. If you're able to observe it,
Yeah.
then it is not you.
Right.
It's another entity. So Chris is entity number 1 is observing entity number 2, which is Chris's thoughts. You dissociate the two.
That's great.
Then when you're able to observe your thoughts, you're able to say, shut up.
Yeah. That
right?
is. Yeah.
Because if you believe that entity number 2 and you are one, you can tell yourself to shut up. Right? So see that the practical application there is people always say, okay, I need to stop thinking about this. I need to stop thinking about this. I need to stop thinking about this. The more you think about it, because you keep telling yourself, stop thinking about these negative thoughts. You end up thinking it because you are telling yourself, right?
Right.
Instead, if you look at it as a separate entity and Chris is entity number 1, telling Chris's thoughts, entity number 2, stop it. You're commanding an outside entity who has a different mind of its own.
Yeah.
How can you stop your own mind? You can't.
You're right. No.
Right? But if you see it as a different entity, an outside entity, you can say, stop it. I don't have time for you. I mean, talk to it.
Yeah.
Talk to your thoughts. Visualize it like this, like I'm doing. Talk to your own thoughts. Just stop it. I don't have time for you, okay? Get out. I don't have time for you.
I love that.
Then that's an easier way to avoid this misery of having this cluttered mind. And then you're only able to dissociate you and your thoughts if you stay in the present. If you stay in the present and you're aware of what's going on, then you're aware that your thoughts are separate from you.
Yeah.
Therefore, I can tell that visitor to get lost.
Get out of here. You have no space in my mind. I think of it as like a devilish spirit, in a way that if it's not of God, it's taking you away from God.
Yeah.
And I find that speaking directly to that.
I choose to label it as an energy. Remember, we talked about emotions the other time.
Yep.
And I always say, I always refer to it as an energy. I don't want to refer to it as spirit. Because if you refer to it as a spirit, it's overwhelming.
What do you mean?
Because you feel you're fighting an invisible power. I don't want to give power to this entity.
I see.
It's just an energy. A spirit, you're dealing with a spiritual realm, then it becomes overwhelming. Because we are of the worldly realm, we can fight the spiritual realm, but God can, obviously. But from my practical thinking, if I label it as a spirit, it gives a connotation of a superior power.
I see.
Whether you call it good spirit or bad spirit, it gives it a connotation of power over you. No, it's just an energy.
Yeah.
It's just another entity, right? If you label your thoughts as an outside entity, a visitor, it's okay. It's a visitor. Get out.
Right.
An entity, I don't need you. Get out. Right? I mean,
That's
it's
good.
all perspective.
Yeah.
Right? So it helps us cope.
Mm-hmm. And it adds language to those situations that we
Yes.
might not have.
Because how you call it will affect how you think of it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so true.
How you call something affects how you think about it.
Yeah.
Right? If I call, I mean, that's why you should avoid labeling anything, right? If you label something as difficult, then the way you look at it becomes
Through the lens of
distressed.
difficulty. Yeah.
Because you labeled something as difficult. Say, for example, illness, say cancer. If you say cancer is a horrible illness, you already labeled it as an illness, which is bad. Number two, you labeled it as horrible.
Right.
Why don't you just call it what it is? Take it at face value. Just call it what it is. Cancer. Don't describe it. Don't judge it. Don't label it.
Objective.
The minute you label it as horrible,
You're giving it power over you.
You already feel distress.
Yeah.
So how we feel is affected by how you label something. That's why our negative thoughts are just an entity, an energy.
Versus spirit. Yeah, and I think too, the more that those go unaddressed, the more turmoil that it creates internally for us.
Yes. So the Buddhist philosophy is famous for saying pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Yeah.
We will all experience illness. We will all experience heartbreaks. It's painful. You can't stop those. Those things are going to happen. We're all going to get sick and die. We're all going to go through pain or heartbreak or whatever, any human experiences. But suffering is optional. You can decide, there are things that you can do that will determine whether you will suffer or not. Right?
Yeah.
It's like I gave you one example. It depends on how you label or not label something. Right?
Right.
If you just take things at face value and just call it what it is, say if I have a broken arm, it's just a broken arm. So Chris, I have a broken arm. So at that point, it's taking it at face value. It's just a broken arm. But if I say, Chris, I have this terrible, painful, broken arm fracture, miserable. You add all these adjectives,
Right.
then you start suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're telling your mind it is terrible, it's miserable, it's painful. Then you suffer.
Yeah.
But if you just say it's a broken arm and leave it like that with no adjectives or judgment, then it is just what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I resonate because I think about how the thoughts we think and the moods we have, they open or close a space of thinking, right? And that's to your point. And man, I noticed the negative thoughts, for me, they happen frequently, oftentimes without my awareness. So it's only when I notice or catch the situation where I'm like, ouch, I'm suffering here. What's my story about it? And like, it's how do I relate to things in my life? If I relate to an illness in a way that I think is bad, then that's where we create the suffering. Same thing in a way that I can't feel your pain, you can't feel mine. But if you perceive my situation to be difficult or, something that can create that suffering for you. But it's all self-induced. Like, no one is telling you, Terrence, you have to suffer for this. It's just you create those situations for yourself.
And so
you can get yourself out.
Yeah, to help ourselves and to improve and grow, we have to practice, right? So every day there's opportunity to practice being present.
Yeah.
Every day there's opportunity to practice taking things at face value, right? I'm promoting my future book. Right? No, but that's why
It's on the way.
that's why that book I'm writing now, which I'm excited about, is called Practicing the Habit of Being Happy. So one of the habits I wrote about is taking things at face value. So every opportunity you have, practice it. Do it a little bit each day, It becomes a habit. And then over time, you become better at it. So every time you get faced with a situation, oh, it's a broken arm.
Right.
Oh, it's cancer. You stop labeling stuff.
Right.
Because these are habits that you practice every day. Every little situation, your toe hurts. You don't say, "Oh, I have a miserable, I have an awful toe pain." You always we forget, like you said earlier, right? You tend to forget, and you revert back to old habits. So you have to change those habits.
Yeah.
Don't call it an awful toe pain. It's just a toe pain.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's
an ingrown toenail.
Yeah.
Don't say it's a painful ingrown toenail. Right?
Keep it objective.
Just keep it objective.
Yeah.
Just take it at face value.
Take it at face value. I like that. Has a good ring to it.
Huh?
I said taking it at face value has a good ring to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, at the end of these podcasts, nobody's gonna read my books anymore.
Why?
Because I already gave out all the secrets. I gave out all the secrets.
Well, the book is a practical know-how and helps bring forth those.
I'm just joking.
Oh, okay.
I don't care because I'm writing those anyway to help people. So even if you already heard it once or twice, that's the whole purpose anyway. If I'm gonna keep it a secret, what's the point?
True. That's a good point.
And not everybody reads, so some people rather listen to a podcast. So all I'm talking about are the stuff that I have in my head that I'm trying to put on paper. So now I'm just putting it on audio.
Yeah.
Video.
Hey, I enjoy it. It's good.
Yeah, and there's no benefit keeping it all to myself.
Yeah.
I want to share whatever I know, for whatever it's worth.
Well, we have the space for it. Grateful for you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
So, don't forget to like our podcast and share it with your friends. And please subscribe on
Yes.
YouTube. You can help us gain more visibility.
Yes, and leave us comments too.
yeah.
We'd love to hear how the show is landing for you. Maybe new topics or something that you're going through that you would like us to talk about.
Yeah.
I would enjoy hearing those things.
Yeah, or you can send me an email. So on my website, I have a public email. It's called contact@TerrenceAntuacomD.com. It's easy to spell, Terrence Antuaco.
I just would Google it.
Yeah, just Google it.
That's how.
Yeah, the podcast is called What Really Matters. If you search it up, you'll find us one way or the other. TerrenceAntuacomD.com.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Yes. See you guys.
Okay. Bye.